Hey everybody, we're back at Red Rocks Racing Sportsbook. He's Jason, I'm Chucky, for the sports betting podcast Bookends, powered by STN Sports. And there's a little bit amped up enthusiasm in my voice because it's not week 0, it is week 1 of college football. So we're pretty pumped up about it. I mean, last week was interesting. I know we talked about it in last year's kind of bookends throughout the course of the year, that those big favorites in college football, what happens?
Well, the underdogs. And you talked about
right.
week 0 where we saw kind of the 4 main games, not going very deep into the schedule, but the underdogs were 4-0, or
right.
the favorites were 0-4. And we
against those big numbers.
A monster upset with Georgia Tech pulling the upset of Florida State over in Ireland, and obviously a big money line payout on them as a big 14-point dog, or as much as a 17-point dog early in the summer. And we talked about that all last year. We went through week by week all year long of finding teams that were 7-point dogs or more,
right.
and we would highlight 6 to 7 to, I think there was a week where there was 9 7-point money line dogs that were winning outright. So
right.
again, something to look for in college football. And again, as we go into this season,
and
with transfer
SMU almost
portals
lost to Nevada.
The dogs
right.
were vibrant, and we'll see if that happens again here in kind of week 1. Now, again, week 1 we see a lot of excessive dogs. We've seen those. We see the 25 to 40-point underdogs. So I'm not saying go out there and look for those money line dogs, but the dogs that are in tolerable point spread range, 7-point to 14-point underdogs, that's where we see some of these upsets, and look for teams that are maybe favorites in those ranges that have a lack of returning starters, or are going up against maybe a program that you don't expect to be that fantastic that has a lot of returning starters. And all you can look for, and one of the things that I look for in handicapping, and obviously us making the numbers, is returning starters
right.
and guys that are coming back. And it becomes increasingly more difficult to really evaluate a returning starter because of the transfer portal. Maybe he didn't start for your program, but he was a starter for somebody else's program, so he's got that experience under his belt. So it adds a lot more returning starters or guys with experience going into these college football seasons. But as we go through today and we go through some of the games that we're going to go through, highlight those returning starters, and again, use it as a handicapping tool out there to know the number of guys that are coming back. And make no mistake, when you look at the top teams in the country, the teams that are ranked, in the top 10, the returning starters are right at the top of the list, and you see a lot of those teams returning a lot of depth from their team last year.
That's why it's interesting, really, with Florida State, a team that went undefeated last year. We know they had all the injuries toward the end of the season, which affected them getting into the playoff. Here they're a ranked team. They have an opportunity to start the season. I know the game's in Dublin, but they don't get the job done, so it's going to be a really long season for them. I know you love their quarterback, and you can pronounce his last name so well.
Ukulele. Right off the jump, if you want to go back, and we'll call out, Florida State had 8 returning starters, 4 on offense, 4 on defense. Georgia Tech, 12 returning starters, right. 8 on offense, 4 on defense. So Georgia Tech kind of knew what they were getting themselves into. Again, not saying that we expected that upset
right.
to happen, but if you would have gone and looked at the returning starters, maybe you would have said, hey, Georgia Tech's got some guys coming back, Florida State doesn't. Maybe this is a chance where I would like the dog. Not that I see the money line upset, but maybe I like the points in this situation, let alone right. teams traveling to Dublin right. and playing in a
Nevada
different
was over
environment.
A 3-touchdown underdog and almost pulled that victory out. One thing to think about, too, this year is that, or going into next year, is that they're looking to change that transfer portal from 45 days to 30 days. So it's going to cause a lot of these guys to make that decision much quicker. You can't really maybe wait to see where guys are going. So we'll see how the impact is this year. But with week 1 now, there's some really big games that we kind of highlighted that we're going to chat a little bit about. So start with Clemson and Georgia Tech. Number 1 Georgia. Number 1 Georgia against number 14 Clemson. Georgia comes into this game a little under a 2-touchdown favorite. Georgia 24-1 straight up in their last 5 games, and 5-1 straight up in their last 6 games against Clemson. So if you like Georgia on the money line, it's probably the way to go. Clemson didn't play great last year, but they're back in the, as a rated team right now in the top 15. So we'll see if they can get off on the right foot against Georgia, who's just loaded again, and anxious to see how Carson Beck plays early this season.
Yeah, Carson Beck up there in the Heisman Trophy. Georgia, make no mistake about it, they're the number 1 team in the country. Go look at the returning starters for them. They've got 9 on offense, 6 on defense.
Yeah, but they just retool.
Yeah, but again, they are replacing Ladd McConkey, who's a wide receiver now for the Chargers, and Brock Bowers, the tight end here for the Raiders. So they do lose 2 of of their what we'll call superstars
Right.
and go-to guys on offense. Carson Beck is absolutely outstanding at quarterback. Georgia's there for a reason. Over under 10.5 wins, over -40. So fully expected to be in the national championship race, sitting at one of those top 4 teams in the country. Clemson looking to rebound. Their season wins total is 9.5 under 60. So that kind of doesn't give you a warm, fuzzy feeling
tells
there.
you that it's a tougher schedule for them.
Clemson, renowned for defense, and I think it was actually 3 years ago, the last time these teams played, Georgia beat them 10-3 on an opening kickoff game, an early season game like this. So it was a lot of defense. My worry here is that we know what Georgia's offense can do with Carson Beck, and Clemson, the better side of the returning starters is on offense. Obviously, you get Cade Klubnik and that offense coming back, but Clemson's defense returns 2 starters. And so going up against Georgia with not a lot of guys on experience on defense could spell some trouble for this Clemson out of the gate.
Right. Wouldn't surprise me to see this number start to tick up a little bit by kickoff. Another game is number 19, Miami at Florida. Miami is 6-1 against the number in their last 6 games against Florida. Total has gone under in 4 of Miami's last 5 games when playing Florida. And the total has gone under in Florida 4. Of course, when Florida played Miami as well. So these 2 teams seem to play a little bit of a closer game, yet Miami has had a lot of success against the number against Florida their last 6 games.
We'll talk Miami first. Miami gets one of the bigger transfers this year coming to them in Cam Ward, who cut his teeth kind of at Washington State.
Right.
Will now lead Miami. Mario Cristobal, a lot of pressure on this program. They're really trending up, though, with the acquisition of Ward. The U... obviously renowned going back to the 90s, but the U has kind of stood for underachieving these last several years. Very, very disappointing. So they're looking to shed that tag and really put up a much better season. Florida on the other side.
Interstate rivalry, a big game for both these teams to start the season.
Florida coming off a really tough year. Billy Napier coaching down there. I think they're 5-7 last year. They do have 14 returning starters, but that's from a 5-7 club. So the returning starters didn't see a lot of success. The one thing that I noted about Florida this year, and obviously this is a tough game to kick off the season, but they play 8 top 20 teams this year, or as the rankings sit right now.
Tough, right.
8 of their games are against top 20 teams. So really one of the toughest schedules in the country for the Florida Gators, and that doesn't bode well for looking at what they're going to do. But obviously a very tight spread here, but I do expect it. I think Miami is the better team on the field, and higher expectations for this Miami Hurricane ball club.
I think you'll see this number tick up as well by the time they kick. This next game to me, Jay, is a really intriguing game. It's number 7, Notre Dame, at number 20, Texas A&M. This game has gone up from 2.5 to 3. A&M's the favorite here, total 46.5. You look at Notre Dame, going back to last year, total had gone over in all 5 of their last 5 games. They're 5-1 against the number in their last 6 games. A&M is 8-1 straight up at home, and the total has gone under 4 of Texas A&M's last 6 home games. So this game is all the makings of a close game, but I think you look at Notre Dame ranked 7th, that this is a game that early in the season, because they have a really favorable schedule later on, this is the game they have to win, I think, week 1. Although with 12 teams making the playoffs, it's not catastrophic if they don't win this game. But I think they have a much easier schedule the rest of the way. But this would really kind of set the table for them to be a playoff team winning week 1.
Yeah, and I look at it really on the other side of things from an A&M standpoint. Mike Elko, who was the head coach at Duke, transfers over, now the head coach at A&M, an incredible opportunity for him. Connor Wiegman, who was the quarterback for A&M last year, I think that this is a kid that we're going to see probably in the top 5 of the NFL draft as we talk about quarterbacks that are being drafted next year. I think Wiegman is going to make a statement for A&M this year and put up some absolutely fantastic numbers. And I think A&M, who traditionally we talked about was a defensive team and played kind of ground and pound, I think that we're going to see them air it out a little bit more, kind of the same way we saw Duke do with Riley Leonard and Mike Elko. And strangely enough, we got Mike Elko, who was the head coach at Duke, now going up against Riley Leonard, who transferred from Duke to Notre Dame to be the quarterback at Notre Dame. And so Mike Elko is a defensive guy. He was the defensive guy at Duke, so he knows Riley Leonard and kind of knows what Riley Leonard's tendencies are, what he's good at. But I don't know that we're going to see the Riley Leonard we saw at Duke that we've been seeing, because the offensive coordinator now for Notre Dame is Denbach, who came from LSU. He left Brian Kelly who went from Notre Dame to LSU. He was the tight ends coach and offensive coordinator at LSU, had a ton of success, obviously, with Jaden Daniels and that LSU offense last year. And so now he comes to Notre Dame, and obviously doesn't get the running quarterback in Riley Leonard, but I think he's going to employ some of what we saw at LSU, a little bit faster pace, a little bit more throwing the football. So I don't think this is our generation's Notre Dame. I don't think this is our grandpa's Notre Dame. I think Notre Dame's going to air the football out. So I look for both of these teams, A&M and Notre Dame. I think that this could be a little bit more of an up-paced game that we maybe see, and maybe we'll expect a little bit more points than we would expect in these two traditional ground and pound, depend on their defense type
organizations. I think it's a huge game for Notre Dame early. Again, I look at the favorable schedule, and I think getting off on the right foot here and winning a road game here really sets the
But make no
stage
mistake,
for them.
these are two quarterbacks that you're going to hear throughout the year. When we talk about Carson Beck, we talk about Riley Leonard, we talk about Connor Weigman. These are quarterbacks that are going to be, you're going to hear their names in next year's NFL draft.
All right, so now we're going to look at a game in our own backyard. Sunday, I mean, you think about it, LSU and Southern Cal at Allegiant Stadium. We've seen kind of the handle that games here generate, and what a way to kind of kick it off here at Allegiant with this game on a neutral site. LSU comes into this game a 4.5-point favorite. Total is 64.5, a really high total, but I'm going to give you some interesting stats on that. LSU is 6-2 against the spread in their last 8 games. Southern Cal 2-8 against the spread in their last 10 games. However, total went over in 16 of LSU's last 17 games. Total went over in 17 of Southern Cal's last 20 games. So I think when you look at the total and you look at scoring, you might see a lot of scoring here because these two defenses, Swiss cheese. Well, they give up a lot. Wait, one sec, Jay. Listen to this. The Tigers, LSU Tigers, have given up over 2,000 yards rushing in each of the last 2 seasons. And you think about that, and this is the Trojans' first matchup against an SEC team since a 52-6 loss against Alabama in Jerry's world 8 years ago. So unfamiliarity with each other from the conferences, but these two defenses did not perform well last year.
Well, not on the defensive side of things, but when we talk about LSU and we talk about USC and I talk about returning starters, these are two programs that are trying to replace two of the number one, not a lot, two of the number one returning starters in the country. Caleb Williams is number 1 pick.
And Jaden Daniels is number 2.
Jaden Daniels is going to be the starter for the Washington Redskins. So, we're 1 and 2. And so
the Commanders, but
Commanders. That's who we're trying to replace here. So when you talk about scoring and replacing, who are these two teams, and what is the identity of these two teams? Because USC, the identity of them has been Caleb Williams the last 2 years. Jaden Daniels obviously steps in being LSU, but they're looking for the leaders and the quarterback of these two teams. So LSU has the advantage here. They return 12 returning starters. Obviously, we're talking about not having Daniels, not having Neighbors, and that type of stuff. USC, on the flip side, only returns 7 returning starters, and 3 of them are on offense. So a lot to rebuild upon there, a lot to kind of figure out what we're doing in the post-Caleb Williams era. So I'm a little bit pulling away from this game in that I really don't know what to expect at either of these two programs as we go into this year.
Well, again, they both have had some problems defensively, and as you mentioned, they're kind of retooling here. It's who kind of did a better job of doing that. I trust the SEC maybe a little bit more right now because Southern Cal is really breaking in a bunch of unknown guys, especially on the offensive side. Excuse me, but a great game here to be at Allegiant Stadium.
Oh, if you're free, get those tickets. You can probably pay a bundle, and if you're not, and join us in one of our massive books. It'll be on the big screens, loud with the sound.
All right, now we're going to turn to our own UNLV Run Rebels at Houston. Number has gone up, gone back down, started to go up again. Houston's a 2.5-point favorite, total 54.5. Vegas on the road last year was 5-0 against the number. Total has gone over in 5 of UNLV's last 6 games. Total has gone under in 5 of Houston's last 6 games. Houston, however, is only 2-4 straight up in their last 6 home openers. So Rebels were point spread darling last year. During the regular season, not so much in the conference championship game or their bowl game, but something has to give here. But this number, again, has really kind of jumped around a little bit, with it starting to go back in favor of Houston.
Yeah, this is an interesting start, obviously, for UNLV, and high expectations for UNLV and what they're doing with their number of returning players. Again, 12 returning starters for the Rebels, 5 on offense, 7 on defense. But I think this is potentially a good spot to catch the Houston Cougars. Obviously, this team was 4-8 last year. Makes a coaching change. They go down and hire Fritz, who was the head coach at Tulane. Tulane was perennially a bottom-tier team in the AAC. He really turned that program around, put up some really good years at Tulane. But I don't know what he has at Houston in his first year there. From a returning starter standpoint, they have 6. 4 on offense, 2 on defense. So not a lot of guys coming back to Houston, but again, that was a 4-8 club. So he's trying to really leave his mark, change his mark, bring that Houston. But who knows what he's able to do and how quickly he's able to do it. And obviously we've got an experienced UNLV team coming in there. So I think that's why you see the point spread as tight as it is.
But a major question mark at quarterback for UNLV.
Correct. Yeah, but again, the talent level around, the receivers, the defense, UNLV, again, behind Boise State, behind San Diego State. There's a lot of programs, a lot of places that have UNLV to be projected number 2 in the conference, just behind Boise State. So if there's a chance for them to make a statement, this is the year to make that statement. And this would obviously be a big statement win to travel to Houston and win on the road.
Especially, again, as well as they did against the point spread last year, was crazy good. So we've kind of broken down the college schedule again. And again, this is week 1. We're super excited about it. Come check out all our racing sports books.
There are just two games that I wanted to mention. Oklahoma State, I think, is taking on South Dakota State. And we've got Colorado. I think that's actually tomorrow night, Thursday. Right. Colorado taking on North Dakota State. And so you get these FCS kind of top tier, good FCS teams that are playing in the national championship run in the FCS division, going up and essentially playing their Super Bowl against a team like Colorado, against a team like Oklahoma State. So I don't have a recommendation in what I'm looking at, but when you see that Colorado is only a 10-point favorite at home against North Dakota, or you see Oklahoma State, who, I think they have like 15 returning starters, one of the top returning starters in the team, a team that finished, I think, 17th or is pre-ranked 17th in the country this year, only a 9.5, 10-point favorite over South Dakota State. That becomes kind of an interesting game just because what that FBS team, is coming to play, and does Oklahoma State, come to blow those teams out, or are they going to let this FCS foe kind of stay with them? So those are 2 interesting games on the schedule for me, looking at those kind of tight, not 20-point, 25, 30-point point spread games where we see a bottom of a conference or one of the smaller conference teams, but where you see really a premium FCS team coming to play a big time program.
A lot of really interesting games this week. So guys, check out the college schedule again. We're going to be open early on Saturday. It's going to be fun. Can't wait to get it all kicked off. We're going to come back in our second segment and kind of dive into pro football a little bit, give you guys some interesting kind of storylines, and talk a little bit fantasy. So we'll be right back on segment 2 of Bookends.
Okay.
Hey, you beautiful Las Vegas local you. Do you want it all? Because no one has it all like STN Sports. Easy to use app with great odds? Check. Seats that make you feel like you're at the game? Check. The friendliest, most helpful team members this side of Lake Mead? Check. Convenient locations with free parking? Check. Sure, some places have this and that, but if you want it all, it's at STN Sports. Download the STN Sports app now.
Hey everybody, we're back at Red Rock Racing Sportsbook for the Sports Betting Podcast. Bookends powered by STN Sports. And one thing we need to chat about a little bit is our signature football contest, Jay. Last man standing. We guarantee $100,000 in the college contest. And I don't think there's another really good college contest out there, and $150,000 in pro football. So you want to break those down a little bit?
Sure, and obviously it starts with, it's a $25 entry fee. You can get up to 5 entries. Buy 4 entries, we give you the 5th entry free. So for $100, you're getting 5 entries into the contest. We'll talk about the college contest first. And college contest isn't included in this first week of college football. It's going to mirror the pro football season, so it won't start till that first week that we hit in September.
Time,
so this week's not included, so you can still get in today, get in next week. Make sure you sign up for both college and pro. But all you're going to do is make a pick in that first week of the next week of college football. And as long as you pick a winner, you're advancing to next week against the point spread. There's no rule about not picking a team a second time or anything like that. So you look at that college contest, you pick the winner, against
you
the
can ride the
spread,
same team every week.
and you advance the next week. You do that and keep going. And again, the name of the contest is Last Man Standing. So we'll see how many weeks we can go until we've only got that one person left to take home that guaranteed $100,000 prize.
And we know there's some really big football contests out there. I know those are a lot of fun as well, but huge entry fees. Where this one, for a $25 entry fee for one or a $100 entry fee, you get 5. It really is that matchbooks to lumberyards that you really have an opportunity to cash a big ticket in Last Man Standing. Let's talk a little pro football right now. So some great storylines, starting with the Dallas Cowboys first. We know that they had question marks around CeeDee Lamb and Dak Prescott and Micah Parsons. They go ahead and sign CeeDee Lamb, 4-year extension. He'll be the second highest paid receiver in pro football behind Justin Jefferson. Dak, it looks like, is going to play out this year. Same with Micah Parsons, and we'll see ultimately where that goes. But I think the bigger question for me is a team out west, and that's the San Francisco 49ers. We know that they've paid Debo. We know that they've paid CMC. They've paid Bosa. They've paid Kittle. They're going to come up for a big payday on Brock Purdy next year. They don't have that option for the 5th year since he was the last pick in the draft, not a first-round pick. They currently have Brandon Ayuk sitting out and Trent Williams sitting out. Both have said they probably won't play without a new deal. I mean, this has been going on the entire preseason now. They have to make a decision with these guys, I would think, sooner rather than later. But that's a huge question mark for me going in if Ayuk and Williams aren't there week 1 against the Jets.
Yeah, and I think I said it probably going on 2 or 3 weeks ago that I wasn't really concerned with the CeeDee Lamb situation. That was something Dallas had to take care of. But the lack of urgency on the Niners side of things had me concerned. It had me concerned 2 and 3 weeks ago because I didn't feel like these deals were going to get done.
It doesn't make sense, though. I mean, they had the trade in place with New England. They let him say, I don't want to go there. They had the trade in place with Cleveland. They let him say, I don't want to go there. In both cases, Kendrick Bourne coming out west or Amari Cooper getting a wide receiver. Then you had the supposed deal in place with the Steelers, but it wasn't enough. So now the Commanders have kind of re-entered the trade talks, but I think they have to make a decision. They keep saying they want to sign him to a long-term deal, and it's close, but it's obvious, knowing they have to pay Purdy, knowing they have to pay Trent Williams, that they just can't get a deal done. It just seems short-sighted not to move on. You drafted Ricky Purcell. You've got Jawan Jennings. There's a lot of receivers on the free agent market right now or waiver wire. I think you have to move on and make a decision because especially Trent Williams, to me, is the bigger sign. I think you have to get him signed for week 1 to protect Purdy and open those holes for C-Mac. But in Ayuk's case, I think you have to trade him.
I don't know what they're doing. To put it bluntly, I don't understand it. We're a week and a half away from kicking off the NFL season.
Right.
They don't know what they're doing with their number 2 wide receiver. Maybe they feel super comfortable in the fact that Jennings and Purcell can take that role and play it, or depend more on Kittle.
Purcell's been hurt. I mean,
they've got a healthy Debo Samuel, but if anybody gets hurt those first couple of weeks, they have to pay Ayuk even more. And I think it's disappointing in the fact that, again, we're trying to book games and book games the right way, and you have question marks. Anytime there's question marks in anything, it throws a crazy, what are we doing? What are we trying to figure out? And I think those of you that are playing fantasy football, you're kind of mad as well in that, Brandon Ayuk is a top 3rd round, 4th round pick, maybe even quicker than that if he's signed and playing. And kind of where does that go with him there? And if he ends up on a Steelers team or if he ends up on a Commanders team, what does that mean to you? So obviously these storylines become very, very interesting. But I said it, and I said it 3 weeks ago, I'm concerned that the 49ers don't have a sense of urgency coming into this season. They're a team that, again, has consistently been in NFC championships and now in Super Bowls, and I feel like they just want to get back to the playoffs, and I think that leads to a lackluster regular season, and we saw it a little bit out of the Kansas City Chiefs last year. And without these signings, it's even giving me more of that. Are the 49ers not going to be clicking on all cylinders for these first 4 to 6 weeks, and then we're going to see the 49ers teams that we're used to seeing come the back end of the season, and we're going to watch them dominate the back end of the season once they get this stuff figured out.
Without Williams and Ayuk, I think it becomes more of a struggle. But I really think when you look at Dallas and you look at San Francisco, Dallas, again, tough decisions with with Dak and with Micah Parsons, that window starting to close a little bit because of the investment in a quarterback. Dak, he's going to be looking for a $60 million deal. We saw what happened with Kirk Cousins when he was ultimately or eventually able to test free agency. That might happen with Dak too, is that he can't be franchised. So he might move on. Just tough decisions for both these two teams. And then I even think about a team in the AFC, and that's Cincinnati.
Well, before you leave the NFC, you talk about San Francisco and Dallas. And I'm, with all due respect to San Francisco, who's obviously at the top of the charts, I have Philadelphia, Detroit, and Green Bay rated higher than the San Francisco 49ers at this point in time. And I can tell you, the other team that's a big sleeper for me, I like the Rams. I like the Rams out in the West. I think that they have a chance to potentially leapfrog the San Francisco Niners team. And I know they lost some stuff on defense, but a healthy Cooper Kupp going along with what you hope is a healthy Puka Nacua and that running game, and
Williams
obviously
and Corum now,
and what McVay consistently does with that Rams team. I think the Rams are a sleeper team and a team to look out for. But again, Philadelphia, Detroit, Green Bay, I think are all teams that are very, very scary from an NFC standpoint. And I don't know where I'd even have Dallas at this point in time. They've lost some. They've got some injuries on defense that they've occurred here in the preseason, and I don't know what the heck they're doing in the running back room and coming back to Ezekiel Elliott.
Well, Dalvin Cook,
and now we signed Dalvin Cook. So again, I think they're asking themselves who they are, and when a team is doing that a week and a half before the season and signing a guy like Dalvin Cook to come play means that they're uncomfortable where they're at. And that's not a good sign if you're a Dallas Cowboy.
Right. And I think you look in the AFC at Cincinnati, too. T. Higgins, he's playing on the franchise tag, so he's trying to have a big year, maybe to move on. They didn't trade him in the offseason or give him a long-term deal, which he wanted. And then you've got Jamar Chase, who still has 2 years left on his deal, who was looking for a new deal. Now, he did report back, and I thought all along, with 2 years left, it was going to be hard-pressed for a Bengal team that's up against the cap as well to kind of fit that in. But a lot of question marks around wide receivers. CD got his money. Justin Jefferson got his money. Those are really the only two. DJ Moore with the Bears, who they signed him with 2 years left. Bengals aren't choosing to do that right now with Jamar Chase.
Yeah, not in contract-wise, but you just bringing up wide receiver-wise makes me wonder what's going on in Kansas City, who's now carrying 7 wide receivers as they go into the season with the latest signing of Juju Smith-Schuster.
Well, you got Hollywood Brown, who's going to be out 4 to 6 weeks, and you still don't know about Rice. Could there be a suspension there or not? It doesn't look like it because it's so late right now, but he was a big part of that team the second half of the season. You look for him to take the next step with Worthy and Kelsey, kind of opens things up for Rice, but you don't know if they'll get suspended or not.
Just question marks on who's going to be, obviously the Travis Kelce we know, but who's going to be that number one wide receiver in Kansas City. And then on the other side of things, in Buffalo, who's going to be that number one wide receiver in Buffalo? We get Keon Coleman as the big signing.
It's not going to be a wide receiver. It's going to be a tight end who's the number one receiver in Buffalo.
Again, our Las Vegas guy from Faith Lutheran here across the street. Those questions.
Shakur's sneaky good, and I really think it's going to be Kincaid.
You know, what are the Jets and Aaron? Is Aaron Rodgers ready to lead this team? Is it Breece Hall? Is it Garrett Wilson? And can Aaron Rodgers bring them back? And for me, right now, the class of the AFC, the team that I look to be at the top of the AFC is the Baltimore Ravens. I think that defense that they've got there is absolutely exceptional and is only going to get better. And Lamar Jackson has an MVP type season again, and I know he's 30 years old or 30 plus.
That's another subject.
Add Derrick Henry to it, but again, I think that Ravens team for me is the scary side of the AFC.
And I think before we get into the fantasy segment, is the storylines that are really intriguing to me is, and you touched on it a little bit earlier, we were talking college football about Southern Cal and LSU replacing their quarterbacks, but you've got Jaden Daniels who gets to start week 1 for the Commanders, Caleb Williams gets to start week 1 for the Bears, and Bo Nix, who gets to start. The 5th of those rookie quarterbacks to go gets to start week 1 for Denver. Really kind of interesting to see how those guys kind of develop.
And I don't know
how
that
play.
We know what's going to happen in New England.
Well, he won the job. I'm telling you, he outplayed Jacoby Brissett, but there is not a lot of skill position players around him. We saw the Patriots. You threw Mac Jones out there with not a great surrounding cast. It was a colossal failure. I don't think they want to do the same thing with Drake May, and that's why I think they were in on Brandon Ayuk so much. They're willing to make Brandon Ayuk one of the top 5 receivers in all of football, and he didn't want to go there because he knows the cupboard is fairly bare. He would have been number 1. He would have got paid, but after playing for San Francisco, having chances to win Super Bowls, he wasn't going to get that right now with the Patriots.
With all due respect to your fairly bare, the cupboard's empty. Cupboard's empty.
All right, so now we're going to jump into a kind of a little bit of a fun segment, and that's fantasy football. We know a lot of you guys play fantasy. Jay and I do. We have fun with it as well. So we're going to talk about guys that are kind of outside the top 5 to 8, maybe even 10 in some cases at quarterback, running back, and somebody who catches the rock, and kind of go through who we like a little bit. So for quarterback, for me, my sneaky pick is Kyler Murray of the Arizona Cardinals. He's been a top 10 quarterback before. He's now a full year removed from the injury. You add Marvin Harrison to the mix. You add Michael Wilson, who really came on strong last year, arguably a tight end that could be top 3, Trey McBride. And I really think that he's a guy that inside the 20, he gets 30% of the carries, or inside, the red zone, where he has a chance to score. I think Kyler Murray has a chance to finish top 5 in fantasy wide receivers this year.
And you're going to have to draft Kyler Murray probably in that 5th to 6th round of your fantasy drafts. He's actually been somebody that a lot of guys have been targeting.
But he's after that initial push.
Yeah, not in those top guys. And obviously you talked about adding Harrison to what we saw McBride do last year. I think
Michael Wilson he was the number 1 guy without Harrison.
Absolutely. I'm gonna stay in home, and we're big fans of Caleb Williams, and I'm going to stay a sleeper Caleb Williams, and I'm going to sit, and I'm not taking a quarterback, and he's going like quarterback 14. I can get him in the 10th, 11th, 12th round. He slips back. I'm getting, the number 1 pick in the draft. Arguably, I have DJ Moore. I have Keenan Allen.
Right.
I get a budding star in Ron Odunze. Right. I get a tight end in Komet. And I really think
Gerald Everett, who's a big tight end target. Yeah.
And I think that the best attribute of DeAndre Swift and why he's not sticking with the Eagles is that his best attribute is catching the ball out of the backfield.
Right.
And the Eagles, while he had a good season there, if you go back to DeAndre Swift with the Lions, he caught the ball out of the backfield all the time. The Eagles didn't really use him that way, use him more as a runner because they don't dump off to the running backs a ton. And so I think the Bears pick up a steal in Swift. And I think he's a running quarterback. So the guys that he's going after that are like the Tuas, the Purdys, the Goffs, those guys aren't getting you the rushing yards.
Right.
I think Caleb Williams is going to get you those rushing yards. I think you might get a couple of rushing TDs from him as well. And so
we saw it in the preseason.
I don't think he's QB 14. I think he finds his way if he stays healthy and he ends the season a QB 8, 9, or 10. And so I think there's draft value on Caleb Williams, let alone I get to cheer for the bucket full of wide receivers that he has.
I thought you were going to say you get to cheer for top Bears.
And I think that from a defensive standpoint, again, knowing that we have to go play the Lions, knowing that you have to go play the Packers, those teams are going to be able to put up points. I think the Bears are going to be having to put up points. They're going to have to be averaging that 21, 24 points a game to stay competitive and win a lot of these games. And I think Caleb Williams exceeds expectations from a fantasy standpoint. I actually think that he has a chance to put up the Bears' first 4,000-yard season if they let him chuck the ball.
All right, so Kyler Murray, Caleb Williams. Now we're going to jump over to running back. And it's a head-scratcher for me. Everybody keeps talking about, of course, CMC, Breece Hall, Bijan Robinson, Jonathan Taylor, Saquon Barkley, King Henry. How can Derrick Henry not be number 1? I mean, you talk about a Baltimore Raven team that had 20 rushing touchdowns last year combined with guys that most of you can't even remember who they are. This is Derrick Henry. I mean, I think he's got a shot to be number 1 as far as running backs go in fantasy football. I know he doesn't catch the ball a lot out of the backfield, but he's got a real shot to get in that 10 to 15 rushing touchdown range.
Yeah, and I think that's a big deal. What you just mentioned is, are you playing in a standard league? Are you playing in a half PPR? Are you playing in a PPR? Obviously, the more PPR you go, the less Derrick Henry value becomes. And he's not he's going in that running back 8-9 range, sometime around Achane
Jay,
and Williams.
Was Gus Edwards last year, Melvin Gordon, Justice Hill, and Keaton Martin, who had 20 rushing touchdowns.
Yeah, you're just going into that chasing an aging running back. But again, they brought him in for a reason. We'll see how much Justice Hill gets used behind him. Harbaugh has talked about that they still view Hill as a starting running back. But you talked about King Henry around that goal line. How much is Lamar Jackson going to steal around that goal line? And how much can they just pound with him? And again, the Ravens,
but
with
Jackson's
that defense,
different than Hurts. He's not that same running quarterback around the goal line. He gets more of his touchdowns from outside the 10.
The one thing that I look at, and again, why I love the Ravens, is I love this defense. I love the Baltimore Ravens defense. And when you get leads, the best thing about Derrick Henry is he holds leads. You hand him the ball, he gets his 4 or 5 chunks, time's coming off the clock, and now Lamar Jackson doesn't have to go do that. You don't have to put the pain on his body to go and have these rushing yards. So if Baltimore's in leads late in games, the third and fourth quarter, where Derrick Henry has consistently done most of his damage throughout his career as the line wears guys down, and now you don't want to tackle this 240-pound body, that's what you're going to get in the third and fourth quarter. You're going to get Derrick Henry rolling over teams when they have the lead. And so I think that's where Derrick Henry does come
with Lamar
to play
Jackson,
that factor.
it spreads that defense out a little bit more because you're worried about him as well. And you're right. He's probably only going to get in that 60 to 65% of the carries, and Justice Hill will be able to spell him a lot. But Henry around the goal line, and then when you want to put the game away, it's going to be King Henry.
Yeah, and I don't know if he qualifies as a sleeper. He's still a guy that should. If he's slipping out of your second round in your
there's
league,
at least 6 or 7 guys that are going before him, and that's why it's, to me, because I think he should be maybe number 1. I'm
gonna go much deeper in a guy that is currently being drafted as running back 29 this year, and that's Brian Robinson Jr., the running back for the Washington Commanders. He finished running back 21 last year in kind of a split scenario. And now they bring in Austin Eckler as kind of his number 2 back behind him. And obviously Austin Eckler is hard to hear his name and say that's a running back number 2. He's more of a 1A and a 1B. But I don't know what's on his legs. We really saw him deteriorate with that Chargers team last year. And what I'm most excited about is this Commanders team is obviously you have a rookie quarterback in Jalen Daniels. More importantly, you have Cliff Kingsbury, who comes over as now their offensive coordinator. So they're going to see much more of an up-pace offense. And obviously, we talk about Cliff Kingsbury, and you think about this is a guy that wants to throw the football. Cliff Kingsbury, as the head coach with the Arizona Cardinals in 2020, Kenyon Drake led the National Football League in goal line carries and had 10 rushing touchdowns under Cliff Kingsbury. In 2021, James Conner was second in the National Football League in goal line carries and had 18 touchdowns. Cliff Kingsbury knows how to use a running back at the goal line. Brian Robinson Jr. is the goal line back for the Washington Commanders. Yep. He will not finish as running back 29. He will not finish as running back 21 like he did last year. Brian Robinson Jr. will be up above running back 12. Go get him. He's a sleeper. Win your league.
All right. Now we're going to go to pass catchers. I'm not using a wide receiver. I'm using a tight end, and that's Jake Ferguson of the Cowboys. I think you look at the Cowboys offense right now, you touched on it. They went out and got Delvin Cook. They're not really happy with their running backs. You look at CeeDee Lamb, who got the big contract. He's going to be double-teamed. Ferguson was one of 7 tight ends last year to have over 100 targets. Guess who's not there this year? Tony Pollard and Michael Gallup, who combined had 125 targets last year. Somebody has to make up that and get those targets. You're going to have Cooks, and you're going to have CeeDee Lamb going deep. You have a lack of running back. The guy underneath is going to be Jake Ferguson. I think Jake Ferguson of the Cowboys, you don't get one of those initial kind of big tight ends of Kincaid or McBride or Kelsey early. I think you go out and you get Jake Ferguson, and I think he finishes at the top 5 tight end in the NFL this year for fantasy.
I'm gonna go to a wide receiver, a guy that's probably somewhere around 113 on your draft boards from an overall standpoint, going kind of a 9th and 10th round from a wide receiver standpoint. In 2021, playing for the Alabama Crimson Tide, he had 79 receptions for 1,572 yards and 15 touchdowns. In the national championship game, he tore his ACL. He then slipped in the draft. He would have been the number 1 receiver in the draft without a doubt. Drake London was taken with the 8th pick in the 2022 draft out of USC by the Falcons. Garrett Wilson taken with the 10th pick out of Ohio State by the Jets. Chris Olave taken with the 11th pick out of Ohio State by the Saints. Again, 8, 10, 11. Drake London's going late second round this year. Garrett Wilson's a first-round pick, maybe back end, a second round. Chris Olave, late second round, early third round. This guy was better than all of them in college. He would have been drafted in front of all of them in college. Recovered from ACL surgery in 2022, came back. 2023 starts, he gets suspended for gambling, doesn't play the first 4 games. The guy I'm talking about, Jameson Williams, for the Detroit Lions, sits as their second receiver now to St. Brown. Obviously, they have Laporta as their tight end.
Right.
They drop Josh Reynolds, who's now in Denver. Strangely enough, this week they pick up Tim Patrick from Denver back to the Lions. But in the 10th round, to get a talent and a guy of Jameson Williams' classification, look at the player he was.
Big play capability.
And Dan Campbell has said that he's had one of the best camps. He's come in with a rejuvenated attitude. He's got professionalism about him. The talent level is there. The offense is there. Detroit has got an absolutely fantastic offense. The reason he's slipping to 10th and 11th in the draft, he's never done anything. Right. And he's behind Laporta. He's behind St. Brown. He's behind Gibbs. And he's behind Montgomery in the depth chart of who they want to get the ball to. However, he's got the talent. So if St. Brown is being doubled, if Laporta is being doubled, teams are leaving Jameson Williams on an island to be covered by a corner. If he can become the player he was, he will be absolutely unstoppable. He's a deep ball threat, big time speed. Go get Jameson Williams. See what happens these first couple weeks. Again, it's a 9th round pick. It's a 10th round pick. It's the true definition of a sleeper and a guy that can go make a big difference in that Detroit Lions offense.
I think for receivers, we both gave you guys that won't go in the top 6 to 7 rounds, in Ferguson and Jameson Williams. So just wanted to have some fun this week. Throughout the season, we'll kind of touch on who we like every week going in. Next week, we'll kind of give you guys, going into week 1, who we like. These are some of our sleepers right now. And don't forget, it's such a great time to get signed up for STN Sports, our mobile app. Up to a $250 no-worry wager. I mean, it is great. You're heading into football season. That's the time to get signed up.
Yeah, and if you don't understand what a $250 no-worry wager is, Station Casinos has lost our marbles. We're essentially giving you $250 free dollars. Put $250 in your account as a new sign-up. Make a $250 bet. You win, you cash the ticket. You lose, we give you the $250 back. It's absolutely crazy. Get signed up today.
So it's a really cool thing. Again, we're excited. I think you can tell in our voice and kind of the smiles on our face. We're excited that football's here. It's going to be a fun holiday weekend, expanded hours, great contest, the up to $250 no-worry wager. Come on out, have some fun. Gave you some fantasy tidbits. It's going to be an exciting football season. We can't wait, guys, and we will see you next week on the Sports Betting Podcast Bookends, powered by STN Sports. Again, he's Jason. I'm Chucky. We'll see you guys next week.